All right, let's dive right into a really big idea. How can we do the most good in the world? I mean, it sounds simple, right? But it's not. There's this deep tension, this paradox, hiding just under the surface between two totally different ways of thinking about progress. And you know what? Getting a handle on this tension, it might just change the way you see everything. So let's ask it again. How do you do the most good? I mean, really think about it. Is the best way to fund some specific, super measurable thing like, I don't know, providing a vaccine? Or is it about pushing for these huge, massive, systemic changes that can lift millions of people up at once? We're going to dig into those two powerful and, yeah, seemingly contradictory answers. And that's what brings us to this idea we're calling the Rosling Paradox.
Okay, first up, let's tackle this from what you might call a managerial point of view. This approach is super practical, super direct. It's all about looking at the resources we have and asking, okay, how do we use these in the smartest way possible?
So the thinker Bjorn Lomborg, he has a name for this. He calls it an allocation problem. And honestly, it's a really simple question at its core. If you've got scarce resources, let's just say you have one single dollar, where should you put that dollar to save the most lives, to do the absolute most good? It's all about squeezing the most impact out of every penny, maximum efficiency. And get this, when Lomborg's group, the Copenhagen Consensus, actually crunches the numbers on this stuff, a super clear pattern pops up. These direct health interventions, things like vaccinations, giving out essential micronutrients, deworming kids, preventing malaria, they consistently have these staggering benefit-to-cost ratios. I mean, it's crazy. A single dollar spent here just goes an incredibly long way.
So the key thing to remember here is that this whole approach is, well, managerial. It's not trying to reinvent the wheel. It's working inside the system we already have. The world of NGOs, aid programs, and grants. The goal is to find the absolute best buys for helping people. It's all about optimizing the machine we've already built.
But then you have another legendary thinker, the late great Hans Rosling. And his approach? Totally different. He'd tell us to take a giant step back. Don't start with the dollar, he'd say. Start with the system. He forces us to zoom way out and look at the big picture.
And Rosling was an absolute master at this. He didn't just, list off facts. No, he used data to completely rearrange your entire understanding of reality. He wasn't looking at one-off projects, he was looking at these huge system-level trends that were playing out over decades and decades.
So what did those big picture trends actually show us? Well, let's take China as an example. In about 40 years, just 4 decades, nearly 800 million people were lifted out of extreme poverty. Just think about that number for a second. It's an almost unimaginable leap in human well-being.
Okay, and here's the kicker. This absolutely incredible achievement, it wasn't driven by some perfectly designed, perfectly allocated charity program. Not at all. It happened because of huge, systemic changes to the economy, specifically because of market liberalization.
And hey, this wasn't just a one-off thing in China. We see the exact same pattern in a place like Vietnam. Go back to the early 90s, and about half the country was living in extreme poverty. But then, as Vietnam started integrating into global trade, that poverty rate just completely collapsed. By 2020, it was basically down to zero. Gone.
And this is what Rosling's data shows us over and over again. When you have societies that open up their economies, the gains in human well-being aren't just a little bigger than what you get from charity. They are orders of magnitude larger. I mean, we're talking a completely different scale. It's not even in the same ballpark.
So this huge difference in scale, it brings us to a really important idea from economics that helps make sense of it all. And that's the idea of what is seen versus what is unseen.
Okay, so it's super easy to see the seen stuff, right? We can point to it. A new school gets built with aid money. A village gets medicine. You can take a picture of it. But the unseen stuff, that's way harder to spot. It's all the invisible losses. Think about it. The businesses that never got started because of too much red tape. The incredible innovations that never saw the light of day because taxes were too high. It's the progress that could have happened, but didn't.
And these forces, we're talking taxes, regulations, inflation, they create this constant invisible drag on the whole system. They're like a parachute on a race car. They're slowing down the main engine of progress, which is all about decentralized discovery and competition. They're systematically putting the brakes on the very thing that produced those huge gains that Rosling was showing us.
So, let's put it all together. You've got these two worldviews right next to each other. On one side, you've got the managerial view, totally focused on efficiency. On the other, you've got the systems view, all about long-term growth. And when you put them together, well, that's when we land right in the middle of a really powerful paradox.
So what exactly is the Rosling Paradox? What's the real tension at the heart of this whole thing?
Okay, here it is. The paradox is this. The very same rigorous data-driven thinking that you use to find the most efficient charity, the best buys, if you follow that logic all the way to its ultimate conclusion, it doesn't just point you to a slightly better charity. No, it actually points you toward creating an entire economic system that makes those charities less and less necessary in the first place. And this just perfectly shows the two different roles they play, right? Philanthropy is a corrective force. It's awesome. It's essential. It's there to patch the gaps in the system. But markets, they're a generative force. They don't just patch gaps. They rewrite the entire baseline. They fundamentally change what's even possible for a whole society from the ground up.
All right, let's wrap this up with one final metaphor that I think really makes this whole idea just click.
Think of it like this. The managerial approach, Lomborg's approach, is all about chasing efficiency within the sunlight. It's about using the light that's already shining as effectively as you possibly can. But the systems approach, Rosling's approach, is about asking a different question. It's about investigating where the sun itself comes from.
Which brings us all the way back to where we started, back to that original question. But now, hopefully, we're asking it with a much deeper context. So let's ask it again. Where does a single dollar really do the most good?
And if you look at Rosling's data, it gives a quiet but incredibly powerful answer. The place with the most leverage, the place to get the most good, isn't just in funding the next best intervention. It's in building and fostering the kind of economic and institutional systems that create massive, sustainable progress all on their own. The kind of systems that one day might just make those interventions, well, totally unnecessary.